So right now, coffee is in trouble. Coffee pricing has been going up. Why? Because demand is higher than supply. Because production has been falling due to the consequences of climate change and due to the consequences of the pricing model of the C contract. Those same principles apply to tea, chocolate, sugar, and I'm not even worried about those. What I'm worried about is the staples of our world. Wheat, corn, rice, the cheap nutrition that feeds the world. The things that are impacting the farming in coffee and sugar and chocolate as we denude our soil, as we deforest, will inevitably impact the nutritious, cheap way that we feed this world. So this is a canary in a coal mine.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of The Conscious Capitalists with myself, Timothy Henry, and my partner making the world a better place through business, Raj Sisodia. Hey there, Raj.
Hello, Timothy. Good to see you again.
Good to see you. And today we have a fascinating story with two fascinating people to interview. We have Bob Fish, who's been in the coffee business as a franchisor of coffee shops with his business partner, Mike Miffal, since 1999. Now, he's originally from Augsburg, Germany, but he attended the American School in London, which I'm familiar with, having lived in London for a long time, before eventually continuing his studies in hospitality management, Michigan State, in 1993. Before the foundation of Biggby Coffee, Bob had been a part owner of Flapjack Restaurant in Lansing, Michigan. We call those pancakes up in Canada, but hey, where do you get your maple syrup anyway? Bob also held positions as chairman of the board of the Small Business Association of Michigan and the Michigan Restaurant and Lodging Association, where we spent a lot of time talking about his venture into the coffee business with Biggby Coffee and his partner in crime in co-founding One Big Island in Space, which we'll get into. We got to be with a name like that, One Big Island in Space. You know this is going to be an interesting podcast. Stay tuned for that. Michelle is a master gardener, writer, blogger, former singer, and she describes herself as the representative blank slate as the coffee consumer when she got into this business. Bob and Michelle, welcome. Wonderful to have you here, and it's a wonderful story. And maybe I want to jump in because you were in the coffee business. And you were moving along, I want to say really quite successfully. And then, something happened. So maybe tell us a little bit about that journey to your Milton Friedman moment.
Yeah, my business partner and I started the business in 1995 with, a couple $1,000s in a handshake. And like many entrepreneurs or self-made people, we were dedicated to the business 110% and ruled its growth in a rather autocratic way. We didn't have room for mistakes, is the way to say that. And we were barreling forward as a franchise concept, once listed as one of the fastest growing coffee concepts in the U.S. But in 2014, actually, the wheels got a little wobbly, as they say. And we were a business that built our culture on the ideas of be happy, have fun, make friends, love people, and drink great coffee. But
here comes the but. The but.
But in 2014, the wheels got a little wobbly. We were making lots of money, but people were leaving our company. We sort of called them midnight move-outs, where they would leave their computer on the desk with a Post-it note on it saying, "Don't call us." And we ran into our good friend, Nathan Havey, and he did an audit for us on all the stakeholders of our business. And it really just turned out that what we thought our culture was just a marketing message, and that we were performing miserably per our culture. And that's really when we began to adopt the philosophies of conscious capitalism and began to view our business from a stakeholder management perspective. And it's when we found our higher purpose and our vision. And so that took several years to get to,
Yeah.
both with the collapse, the assessment. The purpose took a year to achieve. The
Hmm.
vision took another year, and it didn't really land until about 2018.
Wow. I'm always fascinated by that moment of commitment to going in this direction. Like it's okay, I've heard it, it's really an interesting concept. And now there's this moment where you decide, okay, I'm going to take this next important step. Say a little bit, what was that like for you at that moment? You're successful, you feel this little bit of wobbliness. What was the epiphany there for you?
The DNA of the organization, our purpose ended up being that Biggby Coffee will support you in building a life you love. That was really the DNA of Bob and Mike all along. We
Mm.
just sort of were trapped in a traditional capitalistic model that said basically we had to maximize shareholder profits and didn't really have consideration for the balance of the stakeholders. We weren't looking for win-win-win solutions. And so I would say that our personalities matched conscious capitalism, but the way we were operating the business did not. And so as much of a hard right turn as it appeared, I do believe that that was embedded in our DNA. Now, the difficulty is when you build an organization on sort of the Milton Friedman model, there's a lot of cynicism inside your business, right? And so, just because we stood up in front of a room and said, "Hey, okay, we're going to be conscious capitalists now." I remember asking Nathan Havia, I'm like, "How long will this take?" And he's like, "I have no idea." And so, I figured it would take
A
about a
long
decade.
time.
No, a long time, because the people that survived in the organization that we had created were not necessarily the people that were needed to take the company forward. So there was a lot of transition in and over the years in order to move forward. But I would say that the principles of conscious capitalism really felt like a hand going into a glove for Michael and I.
I often hear that conscious capitalism provides a framework. You've sort of already felt this inside, but then it puts language on something that you felt. And then I'm always fascinated by the different business models. You were in a franchise model, so it wasn't just you and your partner. You now have to go out to how many franchisees did you have at that point?
I think it would be in the mid 200s. Today we have about 432, 3, something like that.
So those 200 had sort of bought the franchise or on a certain premise. And now you have to go out and sort of say, well, we're pivoting in a slightly different direction. How was that? That must have been a moment of truth. Okay, it's okay for me and you to sort of feel this way. But boy, how are we going to convince 200 others?
Yeah, I think what was interesting is, frankly, a lot of our franchisees were already operating on that model, not knowing that that was a model.
Oh, okay.
They were treating their employees with respect. They were looking to accelerate their employees' lives, understanding that it could most often is an entry level position, but if they could leave them in a better place than when they got them, wouldn't that be wonderful? And so uh, it took a lot of education in terms of the nomenclature and the verbiage and that kind of thing. But I think the essence of the model, it was already there.
Bob, I followed your journey along with Nathan because he has talked about it over the years, and so I've been familiar with it. Um, and I think you were featured in Conscious Company magazine as well with some of this, right? And but one of the things that always stayed with me is that moment where you had that employee survey, which I don't think was a very positive one, and you read those results out loud in front of everybody verbatim. And that was a very powerful act of vulnerability and transparency. And so talk to us about what was your thinking behind that, what was the inner dialogue, and how did that change how you lead?
We got the report. It really sucked. And was rather embarrassing. It made Michael cry that he was running a company in the fashion that we were perceived. And we had a decision to make, and that was throw the report away and continue on as we were, or face the realities of it. And the only way to face the realities of it was to go public with it, right? Otherwise, it would just, again, be a marketing message, right? So, yes, we stood in front of a room in front of all of our employees and read the report verbatim, really through, sort of choked up and, water getting in the eyes and stuff like that. But it's the only way it was the only way to come clean on, our observations and the company that we had become. Understand that we were still very ambitious people. Conscious capitalism is not a capitalistic model. Uh, and we believed that the new momentum that we needed lied in this model. In other words, we had plateaued with the method of capitalism that we were operating with up until that moment in time.
And you've talked about making love as common in business language as profit. So where did that come from, and what does that look like in action, especially with people whose roles might be considered somewhat more marginal, you know?
The phrase we used was ubiquitous, which is a $3 word. You would make love as ubiquitous as the word profit. But, I think, it is the embodiment of the combined words conscious and capitalism, right? So, um, to, uh, t of course, we want to be profitable, right? We're here, to earn a profit. For what reason? To solve one of the problems that exist within the human condition. For us at Biggby Coffee, it was to improve workplace culture in America. Our purpose is Biggby Coffee will support you in building a life you love. In order to fulfill that particular purpose, love does have to become as ubiquitous as the word profit. If we're embarrassed about using the word love, not in a romantic way, but in a caring way, for another, individual, you can't go wrong.
So, Michelle, what was it like to observe this and see this, and how did that impact you?
Oh, it was quite the journey. I had seen Mike and Bob in operation. They were intense together, very intense. But I know them both, I think my husband in particular, very well as humans. And they are loving, caring people. So when I would see them in a meeting and they're just ripping everybody in the room a new asshole, can I say that on this podcast? I'm like,
Mhm.
wow, that sure doesn't look like them, you know? So watching the journey as it unfolded, it was very difficult for them to come to terms with the impact that they had had on their employees over time. But it was the greatest thing. What's emerged on the other side of that are two people who've grown immensely. And as they move through the world now in their business, the kind of positive change that they're having on very young people's lives. I mean, often the baristas it's their very first job. They may not even be out of high school yet. They're opening up doors for people. It's powerful. It's really powerful to see.
Well, it's particularly you were making this big pivot 2014 to 2018, and then in 2020 this thing happened. And I'm curious, when COVID hit and suddenly you're shutting down your stores, your things are, um, how did you frame your approach? Because it is a business. At that point, you have 300 plus franchisees, you're touching a lot of lives. How did you frame with your executive team the conscious capitalist approach to COVID?
We were already there. And so, it wasn't a hard transition for us in COVID. I'm not saying that COVID wasn't hard. Um, our locations never, for the most part, had to shut down. We were deemed an essential business, which I'm very thankful, for.
Yeah.
But the construct of how we dealt with the customer had to change. And interestingly, we were moving to a remote model just prior to 2020. And so when 2020 hit, we actually accelerated that particular model. But one of the great uh, moments, I believe, was we did in the very beginning of COVID, frankly, a town hall every day. That moved to every week and then once a month. But we would have hundreds of franchisees on a single town hall, and we were just practicing uh, sort of the giving a shittedness. And so people were having issues and problems, whatever they may be, in terms of serving the customer. And other people within the system, other franchisees, and us were solving those problems as a united group. And so, for example, we weren't allowed to touch the customers. So one franchisee took a tennis racket, put some cardboard in it, drilled 3 holes, and they could deliver, drinks that way. But there was all kinds of immediate innovation in terms of what we could sell. We started going to the store and buying, toilet paper, and all the things that were short, milk even, and selling them in our stores to our consumers because it was hard for them to get out, and often we had a drive-through format. But the idea of, we could say love or we could say give a shittedness, uh, but that we're all showing up to work together on on the same problem was amazing.
Yeah, and I'm curious now, of course, we're on the precipice of maybe another sort of difficult time. And as the economy turns to real uncertainty, both on the trade side and on the current economic situation, how is that starting to play out between you and your franchisees and the organization?
In business, there are always issues. I mean, there was COVID, there was the financial crisis, there was post-COVID with inflation. There are always problems in business. I mean, if we're building a business that will never have a problem, then you probably won't be in business for very long, right? And it's not whether there is problems, it's how you solve those problems. And those problems, frankly, need to be solved as a group. And by group, I would look to the stakeholders in the business, all the way from the customer to the environment to the vendor to our employees and so on. And as a group, we need to make decisions that are beneficial to all.
Well, let's turn our attention now to the new initiative, relatively new, one big island in space. So talk about the birthing moment of that idea when that came to you. Michelle, were you the instigator there? And what's the thinking behind it? I know it's inspired by that image.
There are really two things about that. Um, uh, we were also at a point with Biggby where Bob and Mike's role were transitioning. They were moving from day-to-day operational control of the franchise company, hiring out a team below them, and now what are they going to do with their time? So they were moving more into a visionary role. And at about that time, my husband had started reading things in coffee trade publications about what was happening for coffee farmers. Many of them were struggling. Many were leaving their fields, and all the talk was that the coffee business was in trouble. And from where we sat, right, the coffee business looked great. We were doing great. So like, how on earth could there be trouble? And this is where the idea of me as a blank slate consumer comes in, because I'm a little embarrassed to say it now, but I had really no idea about where coffee comes from. Really, no idea. I'd never considered it. I think that's true for most consumers. I bet you there's a significant portion of consumers in the United States that don't understand that we don't grow our own coffee, say in California. Um, so I had never considered the value chain. I'd never thought for a second about what lay behind what we call the black curtain between the producing side and the consuming side. So as we were looking forward about what we might do, Bob decided that we were going to go investigate coffee. We were going to go figure this out. And I think it was prescient. My husband often is when he thought about the name of this initiative. It was really informed by conscious capitalism. We are all in this together. That there is no distinction between different nationalities or different countries. We're all on the same planet. We're all in the same terrarium, right? So that idea that we had to approach coffee with those same values is what informed the name. Do I have that about right there, Handsome?
Yeah, I mean, one big island space. It's just Earth, and we're all on the same island, and there are no borders for air. There's no borders for water, and frankly, we don't believe in any borders for land either. And that nationalism is fine from a sort of patriotic, proud of where you come perspective, but nationalism also can be very destructive and isolating. So we just believe in one humanity, and we believe in one Earth, and that's what has led us to the name One Big Island in Space. You know, when we went to a coffee farm, the funny thing here is I started the business in 1995. All the way to 2018, I never met a coffee producer or visited a coffee farm. So what we found out is people were leaving their farms, and we didn't understand it. But when we got there, what we understood was, this is the truth, that 83% of the time, the small producer farmer is paid less than what it costs them to produce their coffee. And uh, and what that means is we have a perpetuation of poverty, and we have a continuation of the exploitation of human capital in the global South. The other thing that we discovered is, why people were walking off their farms is the pressures of climate change were coming to bear. And dry areas were getting drier, and wet areas were getting wetter. And what that meant that it was an increase in drought, reducing yields, increase in pest and pestilence, reducing yields. And so the coffee supply was at risk. So what we decided through our organization, One Big Island in Space, is to change our buying model to a direct trade model. Now, we call that farm direct, and how that benefits the producer is this. A direct trade model is where an end user buys directly from a producer and eliminates as many of the unnecessary and or nefarious hands in between. We take that savings and push it down to the farmer so that they can be more economically viable and have access to the new agronomy that's needed in order to combat climate change. In 2018, our goal was that Biggby coffee would be 100% farm direct by 2028. Today, we are at 60%. And that 60% has landed with 4 producers that we've developed relationships. But in all that time, Michelle and I have now been to 150 farms, and we continue to travel about 120 days a year seeking new farm direct relationships. Now, what I have to tell you, and then I'll release, is that we're looking for a particular kind of farmer producer. We're not looking to evangelize anybody. What we are looking for are partners that are already treating their people right, that are already treating the planet right, and that are already investing in their community. And that's a little bit of a needle in a haystack. But what we're looking to do is build relationships, lifetime relationships, with people that have figured out the solution in their producing countries.
And is there a particular story that moved you when you were on your travels and meeting these farmers and seeing what their life was like? Was there something that was really that emotionally impacted you both?
Every farm visit, there's an emotional impact. So I want to back that up a little bit by saying one of the discoveries we had is that our entire business model was built on exploitation, right?
Hmm.
The vast majority of coffee produced in the world, it's basically colonialism without a standing army. It's extractive. It is, in our opinion, the system is designed to keep people trapped in desperate, crushing poverty and with no mind to what happens to the environment. Um, so once we saw that, we understood it was our obligation to change it. And first, we're going to start with Biggby. So we currently buy about 2 million pounds of green coffee a year, and we're 60% of the way to that being farm direct. Uh, by the time we finish in 2028, if Biggby continues its growth trajectory, they'll be a 1,000-unit chain. We will be looking to buy around 5 million pounds of green coffee a
Wow.
year.
Wow.
So we're in a constant race, not only against our goal, but against this goal that's the goalposts are moving. Uh, Um, but it's not enough for us to do it just for us, because this injustice is it's so pervasive, it's so
Mm.
destructive in the world. Our mission is to put a name, a face, and a place on
Mm.
every cup of coffee you drink.
Mm.
We think that the way to begin to break that is for customers, blank slate customers, just like I was, to really understand where their coffee's coming from. I'm telling you, coffee does not taste nearly as good if you understand that it's full of the tears of children. I mean,
Oh,
that sounds
oh,
flip, but it's the
oh.
truth.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
and so as we go through the world, have we seen stories that have broken our hearts? Yes. I have we seen stories that have given us immense amounts of hope? Yes. We can take our partner farm in Chiapas, Mexico, Maria Esther Saut and her husband Pascual Castillo. They in 2014, because of climate change, coffee production in Chiapas, Mexico went to zero. There's a particular kind of it's called rust. It's a fungus that attacks coffee plants. It's almost always in every coffee field all over the world, and a healthy plant can fight it off. But in a world that is warming, in a place that is getting wetter, that fungus thrived. And in 2014, it came to a head and it destroyed coffee production. And the thing to know, in Chiapas, most people that are producing coffee are doing it on less than an acre of land. And it is what they've done for generations to support their families. They don't really know anything else. Many of them may not have gotten an education. Many of them are so far remote, they still speak their indigenous language. They don't even speak Spanish. They speak Mayan dialect. And their ability to feed their family went to nothing. And our partners decided that they were going to double down, triple down. They were already in the coffee business, but on the exporting side of it. They had land in Chiapas, Mexico, that a big parcel of land that was a cattle farm. And they immediately hired an army of these small producers that they had known over the years to transfer that cattle farm into a coffee farm as a model farm, and a place first to provide employment, then to provide training on the new agronomy necessary, and then also to grow rust-resistant plants that they gave away for free to thousands of small producers in Chiapas. They single-handedly restarted coffee in Chiapas.
Wow.
It's remarkable. So you see both the heartbreak and the potential for humans to really come together, solve a problem in a way that everybody can thrive. So, that's definitely the kind of partner farm we want to have. They're changing the world. All we do is provide them with a marketplace and pay a fair, sustainable price for their coffee.
That's a beautiful story. And it's so heartwarming and so human. And what I'm really curious about is how you transfer that passion, that love to your consumers. So, one of the things that we're having a big discussion about is, quote unquote, the rise or the not rise of conscious consumerism. And that ability for the consumer to have a line of sight to the source of what they're buying. And so I'm really curious how that conveys from, again, your passion to the people that come in and buy coffee at your place versus some other big name franchise who we will not mention at the moment. But, how do you tell that story and how does it translate to your consumers and therefore make business sense for you in that way?
I think that's really complicated.
I don't ask simple questions, Bob. I mean, listen.
You know, no, it's complicated because the consumer is really distracted. I mean, they've got their own lives to live. They've got their own problems at home, in their neighborhood, in their community, and so on and so forth. So we understand that is a really a large mountain to climb. So let me just say that first. The other thing I would say though is that the consumer wants to do well. And they want to do well, I know, because they want to buy fair trade coffee. They want to buy Rainforest Alliance coffee. They want to buy organic coffee. What they don't know is that those organizations don't mean what they think that they mean. They're a little bit of a distraction. They're entities unto themselves that are earning their own profit for their own reasons and so on and so forth. But I think that we have to go back to this idea that Michelle mentioned earlier, and that there's this coffee curtain, this black curtain, where the consumer is not meant to see the producer, and the producer is not meant to see the consumer. And what we're doing is we're opening that curtain up. And today we have the capacity, the capability to open that up. We say that we want to put a name, a face, and a place to every cup of coffee you buy. That's kind of a marketing message, but let me translate that for you, okay?
Okay.
When you commoditize a product, you commoditize the people behind it. They become irrelevant. They become homogenous. They become disposable. What we're doing is uncommoditizing the people. So through a variety of video assets, through storytelling, we think it's important to create an emotional connection between the consumer and the producer. And we have the capability of doing that today. And why do we want to create an emotional connection? Well, if we really do believe that there's one human race, then we can all agree that everybody wants food, shelter, and clothing, whether you're a producer or a consumer, that everybody wants safety, security, and health, whether you're a producer or a consumer, and everybody wants something better for the next generation. And if what we can do is create an emotional connection between the consumer and the producer, and inversely, the thing to keep in mind is that no producer knows where their coffee goes. And so what we're doing is illuminating the whole supply chain for the consumer and for the producer and creating that emotional connection. You know, we think, and we're not on a 1-year mission, we're not on a 5-year mission, we're not on a 10-year mission, we're on a multi-decade mission to empower the consumer to be the positive change in the world, both for people and planet. So we think the best voting mechanism out there is their dollars, but they have to be educated and informed, and they have to be educated and informed in a manner that doesn't shame them. We have to do it in a manner that empowers them, that allows them to make choices about who they're going to buy products from. Now, the largest distraction we have on that is social washing, greenwashing, and fair washing by everybody else. So maybe there's the unmentioned chain out there that we're talking about who might do the same thing that we're doing with 5% of their coffee, but talk about it 95% of the time. So our belief is do, don't say, right? That's why we set the goal of being 100% farm direct. And larger companies make this claim because we're not the first to do this. There's many small cafes, there's many small roasters that do this. But what we are is the first to do it at scale. So we're writing the white paper at doing it at scale so we can put to rest those larger organizations saying that's not possible to do. That's a very quaint idea, but that's not possible to do.
So play on that one for a second, Bob. Make the business case. How does this translate for you in terms of a business case? I'll be cynical for a moment and say, oh yeah, that sounds really good. We really want to help people. Now, help me understand the business case for this from your perspective.
There's 2 reasons. And imagine we're doing this in a franchise system, 100% franchise. Okay. Every one of our locations are franchise. Franchise models are notoriously cost conscious. Notoriously cost conscious. So the way we supply more money to the producer is to eliminate the unnecessary and nefarious hands and push that savings down. Okay. What that produces is stable access to product. That's number one, right? Keep in mind, in 2018, I read the white paper that said coffee producers are walking off their farms. What does that mean? That means production is going down, which has been happening.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So by building direct relationships with people, by knowing people on a first name basis, by knowing their kids, by engaging with them on a regular basis, what we have is a guarantee of supply at a more stable price. So the pricing model for coffee is built on a supply demand system where that pricing could go up every day, every week, every month, or go down conversely. But what we and one of the uh, 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 assets that business aspires to is stability, right? When you have stability in pricing, when you have stability in access to production, you can plan, and so those have been the two largest selling points for sure. Now, what I would say is there's 1,000 tertiary benefits, okay? Nobody looks at this, either consumer or owner-operator, and says, "This is stupid. This is horrible. We hate people, so we don't wanna pay them a fair price." Nobody looks at that.
Let's
So
grind them down as
let's
much
grind
as we
'em down.
possibly
Right.
can, damn
And
it.
we don't have to stand on the skulls of people in order to sell coffee. We just don't. This is just a different model. And so there are millions and millions and millions of dollars made on the consumption side. There is almost nothing or below nothing made on the consuming side. All we're doing is rebalancing that equation. It doesn't mean that we don't make money. It just means that everybody can make money in the value chain.
And Bob and Michelle, is this industry an outlier? Like coffee has all of these challenges that you talked about, or does this apply equally to tea or cocoa or many other similar commodities? And if so, then are you trying to catalyze change in a broader ecosystem beyond what you're doing for your own supply chain?
Well, I'll take the first part of that, and the answer is yes. It applies to every commodity that comes out of the global south. So whether you're talking about tea or cocoa or bananas or whatever it is, our system of capitalism based in these, in the first world countries is extractive. It is, and we have done a lot of damage out there, and it doesn't matter whether it's coffee, tea, cocoa, whatever it is. It's the story is the same. We're focusing on coffee because that's where we have the ability to make change.
Coffee, tea, sugar, chocolate, those have all been impacted by the same thing. Those are all luxury items. And so theoretically, we could give those up. But I do believe that what we are looking at is a canary in a coal mine. So right now, coffee is in trouble. Coffee pricing's been going up. Why? Because demand is higher than supply. Because production has been falling due to the consequences of climate change and due to the consequences of the pricing model of the C contract. Okay. So uh, those same principles apply to tea, chocolate, sugar, and I'm not even worried about those. What I'm worried about is the staples of our world: wheat, corn, rice, the cheap nutrition that feeds the world. The things that are impacting the farming in coffee and sugar and chocolate will inevitably, as we denude our soil, as we deforest, will inevitably impact the nutritious cheap way that we feed this world. So this is a canary in a coal mine. And Raj, yes, we're hoping that people in the end can make the leap and say, hey, if this works for coffee, if this is the kind of impact we can have using this direct trade model, can't we impact other areas as well?
So one of the things that I'm always, and Raj and I are always fascinated about, is what was it in your background that brought you to this place where these things were important to you? What was it that, Bob and Michelle didn't just like fall out of a tree all of a sudden. You had a whole life story. And what was it about your life story that brought you to a point where these values resonated enough to take real significant action on it and build a business around it?
I think one great advantage that Bob and I had, you mentioned that he went to the American school in London. So did I. We graduated together in 1981. I grew up all over the world, as did Bob. I can't take any credit for it. It was our parents. They dragged us around, but it changed our view, right? We had a lens that was much broader, I think, than the average experience of growing up in the same hometown that you end up getting married in and having your kids. Being exposed to that from an early age really informed our ideas of around all people being functionally the same. Everybody wants the same things. We understood that from an early age. And so that definitely left the door wide open. And when you see people being exploited in the way that we've seen as we travel through the world, you understand the fundamental wrongness of it. And if you are in a position to be able to do something about it, we have a platform that's pretty incredible. We sell 50 million, thereabouts, cups of coffee a year. We have
Wow.
50 million opportunities to reach across the counter and tell a consumer why the coffee they're drinking today is going to taste so much better because it's actually doing great things for people and the planet. So I mean, that's my answer to it.
Yeah, I think the greatest gift that anybody could give to themselves or their family is to travel, period. We, you know, we have programs in One Big Island Space. We lead 9 trips to Origin for people that have never been to them before. Here's the answer everybody gives at the end of one of those trips. Oh my God, this is a life-changing experience. If you want a life-changing experience, you don't have to jump out of an airplane. You just need to go to another country. You don't have to fall in love with that country, but you need to experience a different culture, a different religion, a different climate, a different geography, and it'll blow your mind. And it'll change the way you look at this one big island in space that we live on.
Towards the end, we like to we like to do a rapid fire round and ask you some quick and hopefully fun questions. So, what's your favorite country that you visited on one of these journeys, and why?
For me, it's Sierra Leone. We have never seen such poverty as we have seen there. There's a woman there named Kadia Tooth that is just changing the world.
It's like picking among your children,
Yeah, I know.
I think my favorite country is always the next one I'm going to go visit. We learn so much every time we land in country. There's so many things that are the same, but we see so many different cultures and taste so many different kinds of food. So it's always the next one for me.
What is one book that has deeply shaped your philosophy of life, of business?
For me, my business partner's book, Grind, Mike McFall.
Great.
I'm going to go with that too, because I think it's an amazing book.
You should read that.
Adding it
And
to
if
my
you-
reading list.
Yeah, Grind. I love the name, Grind. If you could have coffee with anyone, living or dead, who would that be, and what would you ask them?
For me, it would be Jimmy Carter.
Mm.
And what would I ask him? How'd you do it?
Mm.
For me, it would be, this is very personal. It would be my mother's father, my grandfather, who I never had a chance to meet. He was, he's French. My mother's French. He was a resistance fighter in Normandy when his town was occupied by the Nazis. And I'd want to know something about how he found the courage to do that.
And if you weren't in the coffee business, what do you think you'd be doing in your life?
I'd be landscaping.
Landscaping,
I love having my fingers in the dirt. I love hard work, that kind of thing. So Now, I would probably have a global landscaping business by now, but that's what I'd be
That
doing.
you had franchised and that you
Franchise
had.
landscaping, yes.
And I would almost certainly be his co-founder in that as the master gardener. So there you go.
Oh, there we go back to the beginning and where we started. Well, Bob, Michelle, thank you so much for a really inspiring story of how passion, purpose, mission, and a business model all come together in coffee. And it's been brilliant. Thank you so much for your time today.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you to our listeners. And if you enjoyed today's program, then please, on whatever channel you're listening to, please take a moment and subscribe to our podcast. And if you feel so moved, go over to iTunes and Apple and leave us a comment or two on things that moved you and give us a score or a rating. And as always, thank you to Rainbow Productions for helping us produce today, and for Conscious Capitalism, Inc. for being our sponsor. Thank you all, and we'll see you next week.